I've heard a lot of people complaining recently about how the Empire is weak, and while I do think they could use a couple of buffs on certain aspects of their roster, I think a lot of people are also missing the point of what makes Empire unique these days in Total War Warhammer 3. A lot of people have complained that either Kislev or Cathay or both have kind of stolen the Empire's identity, and I don't think that's necessarily accurate. What the Empire still has that no other faction can bring as much of is mobile firepower. So today, this replays from Aerocrastic. He's on Domination, of course. He's got a Light Wizard leading the way with Nets, Shem's Burning Gaze, and Barona's Time Warp. 3 War Wagons. We'll get back to these guys in just a minute. Very important. Templehof Luminarch here for character sniping. Of course, Luminarch has long been one of the strongest mobile artillery pieces in the game. A lot of people do forget about it, but it's very strong at sniping, single targets. We've got some Empire Knights as well, Silver Bullets, Great Swords, Sigmar's Sons. On the flip side, Malice, Darkblade coming in with some Dark Elves, of course. Bleak Swords up front, some Dark Shards behind. We've got some Harpies as well to shut down missile troops, some Blades of the Blood Queen, the Regiment of Renowned Executioners up here, and some Shades also for sort of Vanguard stock armor-piercing missiles. Let's look at the reserve armies as well. For Aerocrastic's Empire reserves, his General of the Empire is just stripped down to the absolute bare minimum to make it as cheap as possible. He's got a unit of Great Swords, unit of Empire Knights, grenade launchers, another handgunner, 4 halberdiers, 5 Free Company militia, and 2 swordsmen. For Malice's reserves here, he's got a Cold One Dread Knights, a normal Cold One Knight, the Cairns of Cain, 2 Corsair handbows, 2 regular Corsairs, a single Witch Elf, 3 Dark Shards, and another Harpy. And now we're back at it. So, like I said, mobile firepower is sort of the Empire's claim to fame right now in terms of having both mobile artillery, missile cavalry, missile chariots. I would definitely say that War Wagons are the best pure missile chariots right now. Like, obviously, Scourge Runner chariots are going to be better as actual chariots. But one thing about War Wagons, for a long time, their missile damage was bugged in Total War Warhammer 2, where they didn't deal as much damage as they should have, as Malice gets blasted by the Luminarch there in the distance. But that has finally been fixed for Total War Warhammer 3, meaning War Wagons are now the missile powerhouses they were always intended to be. Of course, as soon as I say that, they kind of fail miserably shooting up into these Harpies. But the thing about the War Wagons is they carry a ton of ammunition, and they do a reasonable amount of DPS over 10 seconds. Keep in mind, there's 6 shots per volley, is representing the 6 dudes riding on each wagon. You can see there's 6 riflemen in the back, and they can all take aim shots in a given direction, so it ends up being actually pretty considerable missile DPS. Got grenade launchers as well, which against low armor targets will do huge burst damage, very squishy, unlike the War Wagons, which are quite tanky, as my camera continues to bug out there. Malice gets netted and blasted by another Luminarch shot. He is on foot, so he's going to be relatively cheaper than if he were on Spite, I believe, right, is the name of his Cold One, but regardless, as a Foot Lord, he's going to have a pretty hard time avoiding those shots. See the Great Swords and other units just kind of setting up on the objectives here. War Wagons charge in to disrupt and then pull away all these non-armor-piercing troops. I mean, obviously, Dark Shards have armor-piercing at range, but not currently shooting the War Wagons, having been occupied in melee there. Empire Knights are taking a handful of volleys, though. Blades the Blood Queen in the Shades still advancing, haven't quite seized this objective yet, but yeah, let's keep it right here with the War Wagons, Luminarch in the background, swing and a miss there on Malice, but he is getting very low. Meanwhile, the War Wagons here shooting a target they're not necessarily meant to shoot at per se, but they definitely are felling those Harpies slowly over time, definitely generating some okay value there, and certainly Harpies' leadership won't be able to stand up. A little Shem's Burning Gaze here, and a volley from the Silver Bullets. Malice transforms into Zarkan. Wow, did Malice just like turn into an actual bloody pulp there? That is very brutal. I've never noticed that before. But now Zarkan's going to deploy out into the field here. He will, of course, get drained over time. But if he can manage to, avoid that for as long as possible, obviously that's going to be quite strong. Here, Warp Sword of Cain does need to be in melee to heal him, though. So with him just running around on foot, he's going to be taking that little bit of extra damage there. So we're going to have a Pit of Shades going after those Sigmar Sons. Not the best in terms of value plays here. But, yeah, War Wagons definitely proving to be pretty effective so far. Aerocrastic using them as chariots, probably a little bit more than was intended, but I'd be curious, with some of the changes to charges in Total War Warhammer 3, I mean, yeah, that did relatively little charge damage, but at the same time, I mean, these guys have, what, 29 charge bonus on 18 attack with 26 weapon strength? Yeah, they're going to do very little in melee here, but one benefit of War Wagons in melee is that the crewmen in the back will continue firing while they are engaged. So you can see here that they just get some point-blank volleys into the face of these Dark Shards. Going to provide a significant amount of DPS, even though they're not really doing any in melee. They also kind of force up some nice blobs for the grenade launchers to launch into, absolutely explode some of those bleak swords there. And speaking of mobile firepower as well, that does include their Vanguard missile infantry. I would consider, you know, Free Company, especially in Domination, Free Company and Huntsmen would also fall into that category of mobile missile troops, given that you can Vanguard them up onto an objective, get them into action very quickly here. These Coldwind Red Knights actually had been netted, which dropped their attack order. Now they've got their attack order back up, but not before taking significant damage. A couple of volleys there from the Silver Bullets, taking volleys from the the War Wagons. Free Company in the back. Luminarch point-blank blast, perhaps? Let's see where it goes. Oh, yeah. Yeah, screw that Dread Knight in particular. They just straight route off. So this sort of presence of missiles that has been built up here is so scary that any Dark Elf units that kind of trickle in now are just going to get absolutely slaughtered on the approach. Malice actually gets resummoned here fully after Zarkan dies. Oh no, I was going to say, that's still Zarkan, right? Yeah, it's Zarkan's form. The damage is relatively slow, though, the damage that he takes over time. He is, of course, going to take another hit from the Luminarch there, though. Very painful stuff. War Wagons continue to see off those Harpies. They're going to come forward and maybe even snipe Malice. Another great benefit of War Wagons, 130 range is pretty long for a, like, mobile skirmish type unit. Not quite Elven Bow Cav range, but pretty close. I think Elven Bow Cav are like 140, 150 on average. So Malice going to get in here and start to mix up some of these great swords, but volleys continue to hit him in the face. Reasonably accurate fire from the War Wagons. And it looks like we're going to have a net here from the Light Wizard once more. Double nets, and the missile build is pretty nasty, I must admit. Dread Knights do come back from route, eat a couple more volleys, though, from the War Wagons and their handguns, and they're gone. And then, yeah, the War Wagons concave, or a firing line, rather. Not necessarily a concave, more of a firing line. Fairly accurate. I mean, like 60% or so of those hits look like they're, or the shots, rather, look like they're hitting. So that's pretty good. Zarkan's just running around in Footlord jail, just suffering, which, to be fair, he definitely deserves. There you go. So, again, this is Aerocrastic against just a random on ladder, so it's not the greatest litmus test, but in general, the Empire victories I've seen and had myself recently follow a similar vein. Like, you really should be taking advantage of those mobile missile units as much as possible. Grenade launchers are one that have been featured already. People kind of know about them, but War Wagons is a unit that I feel people are sleeping on pretty considerably. I mean, just as it is right now, if we take a look, these War Wagons have gotten a pretty decent amount of value. One of them is already paid for themselves, and the other two still have a decent amount of ammunition left to do so. And, you know, although they are definitely missile units, because they have so much armor, all the missiles are contained within a low model count of relatively high HP armored models. It just means that they are so much harder to shut down than something like Outriders, handgunners, and especially when used in tandem with those, as we have seen here, they can create a significant distraction, and people end up investing a lot of resources to try and shut the War Wagons down because they know, well, maybe they don't know, but they will feel over time the pain of those shots as they start to use up all of their ammunition there. So, nasty shot from the Luminarch up in the air. I say nasty, it doesn't actually do a ton, but does enough. Meanwhile, up on the high ground, I haven't really talked about it too much, but it's just been a huge concave of Free Company just blasting the Blades of the Blood Queen with pistols. And the Blades of the Blood Queen have probably got, yeah, almost 100 kills already in terms of just slashing the Free Company that do come through. But Empire Knights come up, they're going to shut down Shades, at least momentarily, and then the massive concave of Free Company can move in and try and cap this objective. Witch Elves moving in. They're not really going to do a lot here. Seems like at this point the Dark Elves are just kind of starting to run out of units to a degree. I mean, maybe they'll catch these handgunners and do a little something, but... Ooh, there's the Luminarch shot straight through the center. War Wagons also coming in for a brutal side charge. A lot of them have used up their ammunition. Which means you could unsummon them, perhaps. Try and recoup some of the value there, but this one, low enough on HP, they just get hit by the madness of Cain and dragged down in a hurry. I mean, 90 armor is definitely pretty good, but against a high DPS unit like those Witch Elves, can definitely struggle. Witch Elves do end up routing anyway, though. And then the other War Wagons come through. And it looks like they maybe did a tiny bit of impact damage there. I don't know. It's hard to tell. Yeah, I mean, they are doing a tiny bit of just raw impact damage because of the mass. War Wagons have 2,300 mass, which is pretty considerable, actually. Well, maybe we'll do some fun comparisons to some other chariots, because mass and speed are a big factor in terms of the calculation. And something else I hadn't actually noticed until literally right now is that War Wagons are much faster. They're actually as fast as heavy cavalry, Empire heavy cavalry used to be. In Game 2, I think War Wagons are in the 50s speed range. I want to say like 54 maybe. But so between the missiles being fixed, so they're doing what they were originally intended to, and now the speed buff as well. Well, we'll look at the mass of some other chariots, but between the speed and the mass, you will get a little bit of impact damage, at least into light units, and then obviously the missile damage is much better. Just in general, like, War Wagons are no longer a meme, guys. I would unironically take them in a lot of matchups now, in both Domination and in land battles, so a little bit of tips for you guys. I know a lot of people have been struggling with the Empire lately, and I think it's because they're trying to play them like you would in the olden days. And it's just not necessarily quite as viable. I still need to dive into the Monogod matchups and see. Obviously, War Wagons are going to be quite vulnerable to something like armor-piercing Slaanesh cavalry. So, remains to be seen whether they'll be effective enough in that matchup in particular. But, I mean, against regular warriors, I would think they do very well. Against all the other Monogod factions, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Khorne, I would think they'd also do very well in all of those matchups. But it's just the Slaanesh, very fast armor-piercing cavalry does worry me a little bit. So maybe try that out. So one of you guys wants to send me a replay of you using War Wagons against Slaanesh. I will definitely take a look. Anyway, for this replay from Aerocrastic, Luminarch ends up paying for itself, just blasting out characters. Nice to see in Domination, too. I don't know if I've actually seen this thing in Domination yet, so this is definitely a map to do it as well. The War Wagons come in all over 1,000 damage value by the end, with 70-plus kills a pop. Very impressive performance. Again, the distraction, the sort of the mass hits, the blocking, all very important as well. So it's a great kind of multi-role unit to have in your toolkit, even though it might on the surface just seem like pure missile DPS. The distraction then enables, like these silver bullets, for example, to get almost 2,000 damage value themselves, shooting various high-value targets. The Empire Knights also come in 200 kills, 1,500 damage value. So, yeah, the combined arms mobile approach, and again, that's like, Cathay has great static missiles, as do Dwarfs, obviously. Kislev has a lot of great hybrid units, but no one can match the mobile firepower of the Empire. So definitely use that to your advantage. The rest of the units here, Free Company coming in, doing okay. Getting a nice mass engagement against those of Blades of the Blood Queen, who, like getting 100 kills, got very little value there. Definitely could have brought them down on the low ground objective and just sent Bleak Swords up to capture that high ground objective. Maybe some Dread Spears as well. Yeah, distinct lack of Dread Spears in general, I would say. You definitely want those to try and screen Empire Heavy Cavalry. Yeah, both characters just suffered pretty badly. I mean, in terms of bright spots for the Dark Elves, some of the Shades did okay. A reasonably decent job there. And the, yeah, the Dread Knights, the Harpies, it was pretty rough overall. The Dark Shards actually come in here and do pay for themselves as well, which without shields is a little bit easier to do, but I would say against the Empire, you probably want the shields, given the Empire's going to take a lot of missiles, most likely these days. So hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this one. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.